Hey everyone, SpiderDevice here. I wanted to make a new video updating you on my research concerning the web formula that was discussed in my 1000 subscriber special video. I also wanted to talk about a few other things later on as well concerning some upcoming changes to the channel, so stick around until the end to hear about that. So concerning this formula, let's recap what the consensus was in the previous video on the subject. It was stated that an effective formula could be created by mixing two disparate mixtures, one of polyvinyl alcohol, water, magnesium oxide, and graphene, the other of spirit gum containing silica and extra solvent. Running this through a heating system while mixing would cause the solvents to evaporate, while at the same time causing excess water to absorb into the silica dissolved within the spirit gum mixture, and causing a cross-linking of polymers to strengthen the resulting web. The result would be a somewhat even mixture drawing its strength and deformability from both the PVA and spirit gum, drawing on the strengths of both, and acting with each other to minimize each other's weaknesses. All of that said though, I've come upon some new information and have done some testing that has led me to believe that this formula isn't quite how we perceived it back then. And, wow, that was 2 years ago almost. Time flies, especially when you got college classes breathing down your back the whole time, but I digress. The problem comes from the inclusion of spirit gum as the sort of catalyst in this model. On paper, it would work exactly as we predicted. The silica in the spirit gum would absorb the water in the mixture and harden, and the dried PVA would be heated and also hardened as the solvents of each are evaporated out and as cross-linking takes place. However, spirit gum with the inclusion of silica, or even just enough silica in some cases, is incredibly hard to get these days due to concerns with people's allergies to silica or silicon. There are a couple of other reasons as well, namely that the solidification of spirit gum when water is used can cause body hair to get ripped off, but as far as I can tell from my own research, the allergy concern is the main reason this form of spirit gum is no longer used. Now, fumaric acid and a plasticizer are often used in its stead. So, what does one do in this situation? Well, we make our own proper spirit gum, of course. However, upon buying normal, new spirit gum and some silica and mixing them together, I wasn't able to get the silica to properly dissolve. It would just get clumped up at the top, and even when I got somewhat close, it wouldn't even respond to the addition of water. With further research, it turned out that there were two problems here. First of all, the ability of silica to absorb water isn't a chemical reaction. It's done on the granular or macro level, meaning that each grain of silica would physically absorb the water into internal crevices rather than reacting with it. This would mean that converting the granular form that I had into a fine powder to get it to dissolve wouldn't work, and the regular grains wouldn't dissolve anyway. The expansion that this absorption would have caused would have been the hardening that was witnessed in my original spirit gum experiment from several years ago. But this doesn't particularly negate the second problem. Silica isn't even actually soluble in denatured alcohol, which is the solvents for spirit gum. I just assumed that it was, since most spirit gums included silica. So how is it possible that silica even plays a part in the spirit gum? The only other substance comparable that would cause this kind of expansion and hardening would be sodium polyacrylate. But even then, that isn't even soluble in denatured alcohol either. So what exactly happened with the original experiment? What was the reason for the hardening and expansion? I did say that I was sort of able to get silica to dissolve before, but it would clump up. This is when I realized what must have happened in the original spirit gum mixture. It wasn't a solution with silica, but rather it was a suspension or colloid. It's hard to say exactly which, as the difference here is that a suspension would mean the silica settled out of the mixture over time, but wouldn't in a colloid. I guess in the whole mixture it would be a colloid, but possibly if it was just denatured alcohol and silica, it would be a suspension. But I'm getting off topic. Likely what happens in an actual industrial setting is that the whole mixture is constantly filled with recycled denatured alcohol, which is evaporated out and re-administered into the mixture while the whole thing is being heated. The other ingredients would be added at this time as well, and the silica in this setting would still be absorbent on the granular level, but the grains would be much smaller and integrated fully into the mixture with the high heat. We, of course, don't really have access to facilities that can manufacture such microgranular silica, and constantly repurpose denatured alcohol in what would essentially amount to a modified titration kind of setup. Therefore, what can we do? In this case, spirit gum now is really out of the question as far as the catalyst goes, so it's up to the PVA to pull the full weight here, no pun intended. If this is true, how will it solidify so quickly then? Well, this method I'm about to mention is something a lot of you have sent me over time, and it's something that's already commonly used. Boric acid, or borax as it's commonly known, fulfills one of the major requirements needed for the catalyst. It needs to align the polymers and cause hydrogen bonding and co-linking between them. People have mentioned this to me a lot, as it's exactly what is used to create slime to play with on YouTube a lot. When mixed, it causes near instant solidification, although a lot of people are using the non-hydrolyzed version of PVA known as polyvinyl acetate, rather than the fully hydrolyzed polyvinyl alcohol. There are some that are using polyvinyl alcohol to make this slime, and as far as I can tell, it produces the best results. Take a look at a video here showing the quick solidification and overall strength of this mixture.
What is up, guys? Hey, welcome back to the Slimatory!
There's no more!
Okay, yeah, alright. Maybe, let's look at someone else's video.
I've seen 60-second slime challenges on YouTube, and you can win that hands down using this method. I haven't cut out or sped up any of the footage you're watching right now, and you can see that it literally takes 10 seconds to make this slime. It becomes less sticky the more you play with it, or you can always wet your fingers with a tiny bit of contact lens solution. This DIY opens up a ton of new slime making possibilities.
Now let's take a look at yet another video showing what happens when a filler, an inert substance, talcum powder here, and a plasticizer, here glycerol, are used in this same sort of mixture. The solidification is nearly instant upon mixing, and depending on the filler used, different solid forms can be created. There can even be a certain solid form if no filler is used at all. So this method brings out two new points of contention. What filler should be used, and how should we evaporate all of the water out of the mixture? Before we talk about the fillers, let's talk about the other things we're going to need in the formula, namely the things I mentioned at the end of the 1,000 subscriber special. Magnesium oxide to lower the activation energy of the constituents, namely the solvents really this time around, and guar gum. Guar gum, I think, is indispensable with this method, as it allows for the formula to be thixotropic. Xanthan gum wouldn't allow for this, and not using either would be liable to clog. Also, I've been experimenting a bit with binders or coagulants distilled from citrus juices, but I'm not far enough along with that to really say anything definitive yet. Finally, as I mentioned before, we'll need to use a plasticizer, namely glycerol, commonly known as glycerin, to speed in the cross-linking and give the formula more flexibility. I've included a scholarly paper in the description that shows how the tensile strength and flexibility are affected when using the plasticizer glycerol, although they may use a much lower PVA concentration than we'd be using. Anyway, the lowered activation energy with the magnesium oxide should help with the evaporation of the solvent, but mixing in a volatility enhancer, as I like to call it, would allow for these solvents to evaporate even faster. And if we keep its content to only about 20 to 40% of the solvent volume overall, it shouldn't interfere with the solubility of PVA. In this case, we can use different fillers that will enhance the properties of the formula depending on what volatility enhancer we choose. No matter what enhancer we choose, or if we simply don't use one and keep the solvent as water alone, we can use cyanoacrylate or contact cement. Both of these, however, would likely benefit from the use of acetone as the volatility enhancer. And if we use acetone, we could pre-dissolve polystyrene as a filler as well. If we use methylated spirits, such as denatured alcohol, we could use rubber cement, or even, strangely enough, spirit gum, as it uses denatured alcohol as its own solvent. Strange how these things come full circle. Also, we can still use graphene, but frankly we don't really have the facilities to produce enough effective graphene to do much with, but if you want to add in what little you can produce, there shouldn't be any harm in it. So here's the updated procedure for the new formula look. Make a mixture of 50% PVA and 50% water by volume. Add a few drops of glycerol. Then add your filler and volatility enhancer such that the volatility enhancer is only around 20 to 40% by volume of all the liquid parts that you've added. If your volatility enhancer is the solvent for your filler, mix them together first and then add that instead of adding the two separately. In another vessel, create a 4% by volume mixture of boric acid, aka borax, and water. Contact lens solution could be used instead of borax and water, as it itself contains boric acid, and may overall work better for your purposes. Record the volume of the total formula you have before adding the boric acid solution, as in the volume of the mixture in the first vessel, and also record the volume of the boric acid solution you have. Slowly add the boric acid solution into the other vessel, stirring until your formula solidifies. Record the volume of the boric acid solution you have left and subtract from the original boric acid volume to find out how much you used. Figure out the ratio of this difference in volume to the volume you originally had in the first vessel. You can use that to find out what size of entry holes you're going to need within your spinneret, as long as you also account for the relative viscosities and flow rates. Once all of the solvent is evaporated from the mixture you just created, your finished web formula should be formed. In the final shooter, we'll use a spinneret with the correct hole size ratios, and we'll use a heating system to evaporate the solvents and make it so the web forms immediately upon leaving the shooter. At least, as immediately as we can. And that's the main update I had for this video. There are a few more things I'd like to say before ending off here. First of all, I'd like to say that I have another video coming out soon announcing some content changes coming to the channel. I'll be starting a new video series, or kind of new. You'll see when the video comes out. But I hope to make this video series very well, highly produced, and very well formatted so it's really clear and interesting the whole time. Lately, I've been also having to screw around with even some of my private videos because of automated copyright claims. I'm not sure why all this happened very suddenly, especially with the videos that haven't been public since like 2013. Maybe there's some kind of new thing YouTube's implementing that made it this way, but I'm really not sure. Still, hopefully, the new changes with the new format in the videos will hopefully fix that. Finally, I'd like to once again thank you all for watching these videos and supporting me over the years. The channel has been fairly steadily growing despite how little I've been posting, so for those of you who have been around a while or are new subscribers, thank you all again. I hope to be bringing you a lot of great new content, and I'm really excited to get back into physically testing and building this summer. With that, I'd like to thank you all for bearing through and watching to the end of this video. With that, I'll see you soon. SpiderDevice out.